Here's problem 2. It gives us this equation. It says how many solutions exist here? Are there 2 solutions, 1 solution, or basically no solutions? Now the way we always determine this is by using what's called the discriminant. The discriminant makes a judgment ahead of time of how many solutions we'll have. It doesn't tell us what the solutions are, but how many we're going to have. And the discriminant, if you take the quadratic formula here, this piece right here underneath the square root, that determines how many solutions you're going to have. Now think about it. When you were doing the quadratic formula, if you had a negative underneath the square root, so underneath the square root, if you and I had a negative number, we were done. There weren't any real solutions. So if you and I do this b squared minus 4ac and we get a negative number in here, that's going to mean there's no solutions, 0 solutions. If you and I do this and you and I get a positive number under here, well, then what happened is we went through with it and solved it. We ended up with adding the plus this, dividing by 2a, and then we did the minus this square root bit divided by 2a. And we ended up with 2 solutions, x equals this or x equals this. So we had 2 solutions if you end up with some positive. Well, either you got a negative number or a positive number. What's the third option? Well, what if you had a 0 in that square root? If you have a 0 in that square root, you're going to be adding some number and subtracting the same number. Well, in this case, it's 0. If you add 0 or subtract 0, don't you get the same thing? Yeah. So this would just have a negative b over 2a, which means you're only going to have 1 solution. And that's how we do the discriminant. If this b squared minus 4ac is negative, there's not going to be any solutions because you can't solve the quadratic formula then. If it's positive, we could keep going and we'd end up with 2 solutions. If it's 0, adding and subtracting 0 is just simply going to make it 1 basic solution there. It'll be opposite of b divided by 2a, whatever that gives us. So that's how we do it. Now, the other thing I want you to think about is when we're doing this equation, set equals 0, that means the y value, the height, is 0. So here's what happens. What we're really looking for is where's it cross the x-axis. You've got 2 options with this parabola. It could swing down, hit here, swing back up, and then you got a solution here and here, 2 solutions. If that's the situation, that's when you get a positive number in that b squared minus 4ac. Well, the other option is it could just swing down and touch right on the axis and then swing back up. That's when you and I are going to get a 0 here and there's only 1 solution. The other option is maybe the parabola never touches. That's when you and I are going to have no solutions. So it makes good sense because what we're doing here is figuring out when the height is at 0. I mean, it's set equal to 0. What are the x values? It's either going to happen in 2 spots, 1 spot when it just touches right at the vertex, or hey, it never happens. That's what this b squared minus 4ac is telling us. Where the guy's hitting and then how many solutions are. Doesn't tell us the solutions, tells us how many there are. So for this problem, let's go ahead and just figure out b squared minus 4ac. Well, you notice b is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. Minus 4 times 2 is 8 times 2 is 16. We get 16 minus 16 here. In that square root, you and I would get the square root of 0. Remember, if there's 0, how many solutions are there? 1. I guarantee if you graph this thing, it's going to be coming down and hitting right on the x-axis and then swinging back up. It only hits in 1 spot. There's only 1 x value that makes it true. So in this case, for problem number 2, you and I have that there is exactly 1 solution.